Bianca Conti, 24, could hear panic before it became screaming. She could pull frightened children back from the edge with nothing but patience, breath, and a rhythm gentle enough not to feel like control. But on the night no one could calm the Salvatore twins, she couldn't detect the one thing waiting beneath the noise: the broken glass, the armed men pretending not to listen. The house already split open by betrayal. She took the job because her mother's care bill had doubled, because respectable work had stopped being enough, because pride did not pay for medicine. She thought she was entering a rich man's home. She was walking into a fortress built around grief, and she wasn't the only one watching. In the shadows stood Dante Salvatore, Mafia king, widower, father of 2 children who no longer slept through the night, a man driven by the single wound of arriving too late once, and building an empire that would never let him be helpless again. Then the new maid sat on the nursery floor, lifted a silver spoon, and changed everything with 3 soft taps. The first thing I heard in the Salvatore house was breaking crystal, not a polite crack. Not the neat shatter of something expensive dropped by accident. This was rage with small hands behind it. A maid beside me crossed herself so quickly the motion blurred. "I told them," she whispered to no one, clutching her apron. "I told them that child threw a lamp yesterday." The front hall smelled like lemon polish and cold stone. Marble rose under my worn shoes in pale veined slabs, too beautiful for a place carrying that much screaming. Somewhere above us, a little girl shrieked so hard her voice broke apart in the middle. Then came a boy's answering yell and the thud of something heavy hitting a wall. No one moved. That should have warned me more than the men with guns. They were everywhere, though at first I only saw pieces of them: dark jackets, watchful eyes, the blunt shape of holsters under tailored cloth. One of them stood near the foot of the stairs with his hands loosely clasped, as if he were waiting for a business meeting instead of a domestic disaster. Scar along the jaw, earpiece. The kind of stillness that wasn't calm, only trained. I tightened my grip on the strap of my cheap bag. "Bianca Conti?" he asked. I nodded. His gaze dropped over me once. Not insulting, clinical. "You can leave now and no one will hold it against you." Another crash overhead. My agency had told me premium household, live-in position, special care needs, generous pay. They had not mentioned armed men, or the fact that the special care needs might involve surviving the first hour. "My mother's clinic doesn't accept fear as currency," I said before I could stop myself. One corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile. "Luca Bianchi." He turned and started up the stairs. I followed because rent was due, medicine was due, life was always due. The nursery door stood open under a mural of painted stars. Inside, chaos had taken shape. One lamp smashed, a tray overturned. Milk on the carpet, tiny wooden blocks everywhere. A little boy with black hair and furious dark eyes stood on a low bookshelf, gripping a toy horse like a weapon. Across from him, a girl in a nightdress sat under the window seat, kicking the paneling with both heels in a frantic, punishing rhythm. Her cheeks were wet, her mouth open in a scream. And in the doorway behind all of it stood Dante Salvatore. I knew it was him before anyone said his name. Power has posture. Real power doesn't need to prove it. He wore a charcoal suit with the tie loosened once at the throat, as though someone had remembered too late that children were supposed to soften a man's evenings. His face was beautiful in a hard way that did not invite comfort. Dark hair, darker eyes, no wasted movement anywhere. If he had been shouting, the room would have made sense, but he was. He was watching his children like a man holding back the sea with his teeth. Another nanny stood flattened to the wall, crying quietly into her hands. The little boy hurled the toy horse. It missed me by inches and struck the doorframe. "Leonardo," Dante said. His son screamed louder. That was when I understood the problem, not that the children were wild. Not even that they were grieving. It was the rhythm of it. the girl's heels beating the wood, the boy's breaths turning sharp and uneven. They were locked inside each other's panic, making it bigger every second. Everyone else in the room was trying to stop it. I had spent half my childhood learning that some storms only got angrier when you shouted at them. So I looked down, found a silver spoon beside the spilled tray, and picked it up. Luca said something behind me, a warning maybe. I ignored him and walked into the wreckage. The girl's scream faltered when I sat cross-legged on the carpet, not close enough to touch. Just close enough to be seen. The little boy on the shelf bared his teeth at me like a cornered animal. "That's fine," I said softly. "You don't know me." He blinked. I took the saucer lying upside down in the milk, wiped the edge on my apron and tapped the spoon against it. 3 quick taps. Lucia's heels hit the wall 3 times. I did it again. Same speed. Same hard edge. The boy's breathing hitched. The girl's scream broke into sobs. I did not tell them to stop. I did not say SHH. I did not say be good. I had heard too much of that in my own life to offer it to children whose eyes looked like broken windows. Again, I tapped. 3 taps. Then again a little slower. Their eyes shifted to me. "You can be angry," I said. "I know, but borrow my hands for a second, all right?" Tap, tap, tap. Softer now. The little girl's heels slowed. The little boy climbed down one shelf. I breathed in through my nose and made the rhythm with the spoon. Steady enough to follow if they wanted to. Easy enough to ignore if they didn't. The room changed by degrees so small I would have missed them if I hadn't been listening for years. A caught inhale. A swallow. The shape of crying after it stops being a weapon. The boy slid off the shelf. The girl crawled out from under the window seat. Neither came to me. They came to the sound. Good. Children trusted too fast when adults demanded it. I kept tapping until the girl sat on the carpet 3 feet away, and the boy lowered himself beside her, both of them breathing like they had run uphill. Only then did I set the spoon down. Silence fell in the nursery so suddenly my ears rang. The little girl wiped her nose with the heel of her hand and looked at me with grave, swollen eyes. Again, so I picked up the spoon and did it again. When I finally looked up, Dante Salvator was still standing in the doorway, but something in his face had changed, not softened. Men like him did not soften in 1 minute because a stranger had luck with a spoon. He looked unsettled. That was worse. He stepped into the room. All the air in it seemed to rearrange around him. The twins turned toward him, not frightened exactly, but wary in the way children are when they love someone they no longer understand. He crouched in front of them with care that did not match his size. "Bed," he said quietly. Lucia reached for my apron before she caught herself. Dante saw that. Of course he did. The twins left with the crying nanny and another woman I had not noticed near the bathroom door. Lucia looked back once. Leo didn't. He kept his chin up like it cost him. Then I was alone in the nursery with Dante, Luca, and the smell of spilled milk turning sour on the carpet. "You sit in broken glass often?" Dante asked. His voice was low, controlled, with Sicily still hidden in some of the vowels. I looked down. A shard glittered near my knee. "Only when I'm underpaid." Luca made a sound that might have been a cough disguising amusement. Dante did not smile. His gaze dropped to the spoon still in my hand. "What was that? Rhythm? That is not an answer. It's the only honest one I have." He took a step closer. The room was large, but suddenly I could smell him. Clean cologne over night air and something colder beneath it, like stone after rain. He wasn't touching me. He didn't have to. The fact of him reached farther than most men's hands. "No one has managed them in 6 months," he said. Managed. I almost corrected him. Almost said children were not weather systems to manage. Then I remembered the guns downstairs. They weren't trying to be difficult, I said instead. They were trying to be heard. That landed. I knew because the silence after it changed shape. His eyes held mine for one fraction too long. "What did the agency tell you this job was?" "Housekeeping. child support, long hours. I rose carefully, knees aching from the floor. Criminal empire was not mentioned. Luca looked at the ceiling. Dante's face stayed unreadable. And now I know your brochure needs work. That should have been a mistake. In another house, with another man, it would have been. But he only held out his hand. For one stupid second, I thought he meant to help me over the glass. Instead, he took the spoon from my fingers. His thumb brushed mine in the exchange. Nothing happened except everything. Heat climbed into my face so fast I hated myself for it. He studied the bent silver, then me. "Stay," he said. Not a request. Luca moved to the door. I should have left then. I knew almost nothing about the house except that it contained too much grief, too much money, and too many men trained to kill on command. I should have walked out while my name was still only my own. But somewhere down the corridor, one of the twins made a small, wounded sound. And Dante Salvator, still holding the spoon, looked at me like he had just recognized a weapon no one else had thought to use. "Songbird," he said, as if testing whether the word fit. Coldly. "Not kind. You work for me now." Behind me, the nursery door shut with the sound of one life ending. I woke before dawn to church bells far away and a lock turning somewhere outside my room. Not on my door, on the house. It took me a moment to understand the difference. My room was on the east wing, where the wallpaper was old enough to have seen better decades, and the radiator coughed like a smoker trying to hide it. The bed was softer than anything I had slept on in years. The wardrobe held 3 black dresses with white collars, 2 aprons, and 1 pair of practical shoes in my size. Somebody had planned for women to come and go quickly enough to keep spare uniforms ready. That should not have offended me as much as it did. I dressed anyway. The corridor smelled faintly of starch and espresso. Somewhere downstairs, a woman laughed once, sharply, then stopped as if she had remembered what house this was. I followed the smell into a kitchen the size of my old apartment. Copper pots hung in rows overhead. A stock pot simmered on the back stove. Sunlight caught the polished edges of knives lined up too neatly. At the long central island, an older woman in dark clothes rolled dough with calm, murderous precision. She looked up once. "You're the one." "I'm hoping there's only one of me," I said. She snorted. "Gianna Bellucci, if the children throw anything at your face, turn sideways. Eyes are hard to replace." Helpful. At the far end of the island, a man in a navy suit was trying to hide a biscotto behind a glass bottle of mineral water. He had broad shoulders, expressive eyebrows, and the guilty air of someone caught cheating on a saint. Gianna smacked the counter with a wooden spoon. "Pietro," he froze mid-theft. "This is slander." I was inspecting for poison. "With almond crumbs on your tie, a man can die many ways, Gianna." "Let me choose sweetness." She pointed at a plate of cucumber slices with the same disappointment God probably used on lesser sinners. "Doctor's orders." Pietro looked at me as though we were united by tragedy. "See what I endure. I drive armed men through Brooklyn traffic. I inventory contraband. I once helped move 3 tiger cubs for a senator who no longer deserves the dignity of anonymity. And this woman," he pressed a hand to his chest, "this woman has declared war on carbohydrates." "Your cardiologist declared war," Gianna corrected. "My cardiologist is a fascist." I laughed before I meant to. Something in the kitchen eased at the sound, not by much, just enough. Pietro seized on it. "Ah, new maid, you laugh good, we need that." "Marta says my humor is juvenile." "Dr. Marta says you lie about your blood pressure," Gianna said. "Because love makes the heart race, Gianna." Science refuses to respect poetry. This time the laugh got out of me fully. Then the kitchen doorway filled. No one announced him. No one had to. The room changed temperature when Dante entered. Conversations in Italian died along the back counters. A young man near the espresso machine straightened so quickly his cup rattled. Dante wore a black shirt open at the throat and dark trousers instead of a suit, which somehow made him more dangerous, not less. Like the man beneath the tailoring had finally stepped forward. His gaze found me first. Not Gianna, not breakfast. Me. I had known men who looked for women the way they looked for mirrors, checking whether they were reflected well enough. Dante Salvator looked at me the way men in stories looked at a locked safe after hearing a new sound inside it. "The twins?" he asked Gianna. Still asleep. Something passed over his face and was gone. Relief, maybe, or disbelief that such a thing was still possible. He stepped closer to the island. Pietro discreetly moved the stolen biscotto behind his back. Dante's eyes flicked to the gesture. "If you die of sugar, Pietro, I'm not explaining it to Marta." Pietro straightened. "If Marta asks, tell her I fell in noble service." "She'll ask whether the pastry survived you," Gianna said. A low sound came from Luca, who stood by the side entrance like he had grown there. Dante turned to me. "You will eat with the children in the morning and at 4. You will not take them past the south garden wall. You will not answer questions about this house with anything except household answers. You will not use your phone near the west wing. And if you need something, you ask Gianna or Luca." I folded my hands behind my back so he wouldn't see me resist the urge to cross them. Am I allowed to breathe freely, or is that restricted to family? His gaze dropped to my wrists, to the nervous motion I'd almost made. "That depends on whether you intend to stay." There it was, the first honest shape of the cage. I lifted my chin. "Your children are not an assignment. If I stay, it's because they need consistency. Not because your voice does that thing where everyone forgets their allowed opinions." Pietro made a tiny, thrilled noise into his water. Luca looked at the floor as if preparing a grave. Gianna kept kneading dough. Dante took one step closer. Only one, it was enough. "What thing?" he asked. The kitchen had gone so quiet I could hear the oven ticking. I should have backed down. I should have. But the memory of Leo's face on the bookshelf, and Lucia kicking herself, breathless, scraped something stubborn raw inside me. "The thing," I said carefully, "where control sounds like kindness if you're desperate enough." No one moved. Dante's expression did not change. That was somehow worse than anger. After a beat, he reached past me toward the knife block. My whole body tensed. He took an apple. With slow precision, he cut it into neat slices and arranged them on a plate. Then he slid the plate toward me. "Eat," he said. It was not an apology, not a surrender. It was something stranger. I looked at the apple, then at him. "Is this a test?" "Yes. For poison, for obedience." I should have refused on principle. Instead, I took a slice and bit into it, crisp, cold. My hands were shaking just enough to annoy me. Dante watched until I swallowed. Then he turned to Luca. The agency file was incomplete. "I noticed," I said. His gaze cut back to mine. "So did I." He left as quietly as he had arrived, but the room stayed arranged around his absence. Pietro exhaled hard. "Madonna, I need pasta." Gianna handed him a cucumber slice like a punishment. He stared at it. "If I die, bury me with bread." I smiled despite myself and reached for another apple slice. By mid-morning, the twins were awake. Leo glared at me from behind a fortress of cushions in the morning room. Lucia studied me openly, thumb near her mouth before she seemed to remember she was too old for it. The room smelled like beeswax, dust, and the lavender soap someone used on their sheets. A governess attempted letters at the far table and failed in under 5 minutes. Lucia pushed her slate to the floor. Leo kicked his chair. I crouched between them and set down 2 cups of milk. "I know a trick." Leo narrowed his eyes. "We don't like tricks." "I don't either," I said. "This one's more of an agreement." Lucia glanced toward the doorway. "Will Papa come if we scream?" The question sat between us like something alive. "He might," I said, "but I'm here now." It was the wrong answer and the right one. I saw both in her face. So I picked up the spoon resting on the tray and tapped once against the saucer. then twice. Then 3 times, soft enough not to feel like an order. Lucia's shoulders dropped a fraction. Leo looked away too quickly. I did not smile. Some children hated being caught wanting comfort. "Drink first," I said, "then hate me properly." Lucia made a sound suspiciously close to a laugh. At lunch, Dante appeared long enough to watch Leo eat half a pear without throwing it. He said nothing, but when I rose to clear the plates, he moved aside before I reached him, making space without looking directly at me. That should not have felt intimate. It did. That evening, Luca walked me to the east corridor. The marble had gone cold under my thin soles. Somewhere in the west wing, men were speaking Italian in low, clipped bursts that stopped when Dante's door opened. Luca faced me under a lamp with yellowed silk shades. "If he gives you an order that sounds impossible, do it anyway." Comforting. "He hasn't kept anyone in this house 6 months unless they mattered." I frowned. "That's not comforting either." He nodded once toward the children's rooms. "No, it is." He left. A minute later, Dante stepped out of his office, sleeves rolled to his forearms, the hard line of the day still on him. He glanced at the tray in my hand, then at me. "If they cry tonight," he said, "you go first, then you wake me." Quiet, controlled, absolute. I should have said something clever. Instead, I only nodded. He watched 1 beat longer, as if measuring whether I understood what he had given away by saying it. Then he went back inside and shut the door. The click echoed all the way down the corridor. By the 3rd day, I knew the house by its silences. The grand hall fell silent when Dante crossed it. The west wing fell silent before meetings. The nursery only went silent when the twins were asleep or frightened, and I was learning not to confuse one with the other. The rest of the Salvator estate breathed in smaller sounds. Heels on marble, the rustle of linen, the low hum of security radios. Gianna cursing produced deliveries in Sicilian under her breath. Outside, the November gardens had gone iron gray. Statues watched over bare hedges and empty fountains. Men with guns stood at the edge of beauty, pretending they belonged there. I was brushing Lucia's hair in the upstairs sitting room when she asked, "Were you always a maid?" Children were excellent at reaching directly for the bruise. "No," I said. "What were you before?" I separated a knot gently. "Tired in different clothes." She considered that as if filing it under possibly useful. Leo was on the rug building something severe out of black wooden blocks. He did not look up. "Papa says people choose their work." That one almost made me laugh. "Your father has had a very specific life," I said. Leo placed another block. "He says you hear things." I stilled. Lucia turned in my lap. "He said that to Luca. He said keep the songbird because she hears things." Warmth went through me so suddenly it annoyed me on principle. Not warmth, irritation with side effects. "I hear when milk is boiling over," I said lightly, "and when little girls try to pull away before I finish braiding." Lucia huffed and let me continue, but the words stayed with me. Keep the songbird, not kind, not affectionate, useful. That should have settled it. It didn't. At noon, rain came down in a gray sheet so fine it looked sewn into the windows. The twins were restless by 2. By 3, Lucia had hidden under a side table with a picture book she refused to read, and Leo had bitten the French tutor hard enough to make her quit in tears. Gianna found me standing in the corridor with my forehead against the cool plaster. "You have the face of a woman considering murder," she said. "Only very small murders." She handed me a dish towel. "Then come dry the crystal in the music room." I followed her through double doors I had not yet been allowed to open. The room beyond was long and amber-lit, lined with books and old records. A grand piano sat near the windows with its lid down, black and gleaming as oil. Sheet music lay stacked on a side table beside a silver-framed photograph of a beautiful dark-haired woman holding infant twins. Sophia, I guessed. She wore the kind of smile women do when they don't know someone will call it tragic later. I wiped dust from the frame more carefully than necessary. "You played?" Gianna asked behind me. I turned. "What?" She nodded at the piano. "Your fingers, they looked offended by polishing." I almost denied it. Then I saw no advantage in pretending with Gianna Bellucci. "Conservatory," I said. 2 years, and now I clean houses that can afford rooms for instruments no one touches. Gianna's face did something small and kind that I pretended not to notice. "Play," she said. "I'm working." That was not a request. I stared at her. "Do all of you talk like kidnappers? Only to people we like." Before I could answer, she left me alone with the piano. The bench was cool beneath me, the keys heavier than the battered upright I had practiced on as a child. I laid my hands there without pressing down and felt it all rush back so sharply my throat tightened. Scales at dawn, my mother humming in the kitchen, my teacher rapping my knuckles, because sorrow was not an excuse for lazy tempo. I played before I could talk myself out of it, something small, unshowy, a lullaby arranged into lower notes, gentle enough not to feel like performance. The kind of music you make when you want a room to exhale. At the second phrase, the door opened. I did not stop. I knew who it was without looking. The house had taught me his silences. Dante stood near the threshold, jacket off, white shirt stark against the dim room. Rain darkened his hair at the temples. For one dangerous second, he looked less like a king and more like a man who had been walking through weather without noticing it. Lucia appeared at his side, then Leo, both of them oddly still. No one spoke. I finished the piece because stopping would have made it a confession. When the last note faded, Leo crossed the rug and leaned one shoulder against my knee like it had happened by accident. Lucia climbed onto the bench on my other side, solemn as prayer. I went very still. Dante did not move. "That was Mama's song," Lucia said. Ice moved under my skin. I looked at the sheet music on the side table, 4 notes penciled at the top in Sophia's hand. I had only followed the progression I saw there without thinking. It felt suddenly like trespassing in a church. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. Lucia frowned. "Why?" "Because grief has rules in houses like this," I thought. "Because dead women live strangely in the rooms they leave behind." But Dante only said, "Again." So I played it again. This time when I finished, his hand rested on the piano's lacquered edge near mine. Not touching. Close enough that I noticed the scar across his knuckles and hated that I noticed. Leo yawned. Lucia drooped against my arm. I looked up at Dante then and found his gaze already on me, too direct, too steady, the kind that made my pulse feel clumsy. "How do you know that song?" he asked. "I didn't," I said. "I guessed." His eyes went to the penciled notes, then back to my face. "You have perfect pitch." I blinked. That sounds more impressive than being able to hear when a note is lying. His mouth almost moved. Almost. A radio crackled outside in the corridor. Luca's voice clipped. Another man answered in fast Italian. Dante's shoulders changed before the words reached me. Not visibly to anyone else, maybe, but I was beginning to understand his stillness. He did not tense. He narrowed inward. "There was a car at the south gate twice," Luca said from the hall. "Same plates covered both times." Lucia stirred. "Papa?" Dante's gaze stayed on me a heartbeat longer, then shifted to his children. "Take them upstairs." I rose, careful not to jostle Lucia. Leo slid from the bench but caught my apron before he lost courage. Small fingers, quick release, like he hated needing anything. As I led them out, Dante stepped aside to make room. His sleeve brushed mine, that was all, but I felt it for the rest of the evening. Dante, he had known her surname the night she arrived, Conti. Luca's file had come late and thin, but not late enough to hide the name. Carlo Conti had once handled off-book ledgers for the Salvator family before disappearing with enough evidence to start a war. Officially, Carlo died in a boating accident. Unofficially, Dante had never believed in accidents that convenient. He should have sent Bianca away before she reached the front steps. Instead, he had watched her sit in broken glass and answer his children's grief without once trying to silence it. No one in his world had done that. Not for the twins. Not for him. And now someone was circling the house. The first time Dante touched me on purpose, my hands were bleeding. It happened because grief in that house never traveled alone. A storm rolled in after midnight, all black clouds and hard rain striking the windows like thrown pebbles. The electricity held for most of it. Then a transformer somewhere beyond the south wall blew with a sound like a distant gunshot, and half the east wing dropped into darkness. Lucia screamed from the nursery. I was already in the corridor before the emergency lamps glowed on. When I reached the children's room, Leo was dragging blankets over his sister's head as if he could hide her from thunder by force. Lucia was clawing at the covers, panicked and breathless. Lightning flashed across the mural stars, making the whole room look underwater. "It's all right," I said, which was a lie and therefore useless. So I took the silver spoon from the tray Gianna had left untouched at bedtime, crouched by the bed, and tapped 3 soft beats against the porcelain saucer. Lucia's eyes found me through the storm. Leo's too, again, softer. The room didn't calm exactly, it tightened less. Then another flash split the sky and something downstairs shattered. Leo was out of bed instantly. Before I could stop him, he sprinted into the corridor. I ran after him barefoot, Lucia on my heels. The marble was freezing. My nightdress tangled at my knees. We followed the sound all the way to the rear kitchen, where one of the old hanging lamps had crashed to the floor under the vibration of the storm. Leo stood in the middle of the dark kitchen staring at the broken glass like it was another body. I knew that look, not from him. From myself, years ago, watching my father throw a bottle hard enough to make my mother flinch before it even hit. "Leo," I said. He did not answer. A second later, Dante came in from the west corridor with a flashlight in one hand and a gun in the other. The sight of him in the dark did something strange to the room. He looked made for shadows, for dangerous thresholds. White shirt, sleeves rolled, weapon low and natural in his grip. A man built to meet violence halfway. But the second he saw Leo, the gun vanished behind his leg. Lightning cut the kitchen bright. Leo lurched backward into the fallen lamp and cried out. I got to him first. So did Dante. Our hands met on Leo's wrist. The contact lasted less than a second. It landed like a match head. "He's cut," I said. Dante set the gun on the steel prep table without taking his eyes off his son. "Bring towels." I moved before he finished. Lucia had gone silent in the doorway, face white in the intermittent light. I shoved clean linen into her hands because frightened children sometimes steadied when given jobs, and because I needed her looking at something besides the blood welling along Leo's foot. Dante lifted his son onto the table with terrifying gentleness. Leo bit down on his fist, trying not to cry. That did me in more than the cut itself. "It's glass," Dante said, voice level. "Not deep. How do you know?" I snapped. His gaze flicked up once. "Because I've seen deep." The words hit harder than if he had raised his voice. I rinsed the wound under the sink while Dante held Leo still. The flashlight lay on its side, throwing skewed light across the steel and tile. Rain battered the back windows. Lucia stood beside me, clutching towels to her chest like prayer cloths. When I reached for more gauze, my palm came down on a hidden shard. Pain flashed hot and stupid. I hissed and jerked back. Dante caught my wrist before blood hit the floor. Everything went very still. His fingers closed around me with absolute precision, firm enough to stop the bleeding, careful enough not to hurt more. His thumb pressed against the base of my palm, warm, unavoidable. He looked at the cut, not at me, but that somehow made it worse. "Sit," he said. "I'm fine, Bianca." The use of my actual name startled me more than the blood. I sat. He wrapped Leo's foot first. Of course he did. Lucia climbed onto a stool and leaned against my shoulder in tiny, exhausted increments until the contact no longer felt accidental. When Leo stopped shaking, Dante turned to me without a word. He rinsed my hand himself. Water ran pink over the sink, his head bent close. A white scar disappeared beneath the collar of his shirt and reappeared near his throat like a line someone had once tried to cut through him. I should not have stared. But thunder sounded and he went still in a way that had nothing to do with weather, not fear, memory. Then it was gone. He wrapped my palm in gauze with the same care he had used on Leo. He wrapped my palm in silence, not awkward silence, not gentle silence, the kind men like Dante Salvator carried with them because words were too blunt for whatever they were actually holding back. The gauze moved around my hand in clean white turns. His fingers were precise, efficient. But now and then his thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, where the pulse lived too close to the skin, and every nerve in me seemed to notice at once. Leo watched from the steel table with his jaw set stubbornly against pain. Lucia leaned against my side, damp curls against my arm, exhausted enough to stop pretending she didn't want comfort. When Dante finished, he tied off the bandage and looked at my hand as if he expected it to argue with him. "Keep it dry," he said. I stared at the neat white wrap. "You moonlight as a surgeon. No, pity, your bedside manner is terrifying enough." A shadow moved at the corner of his mouth, not quite amusement, not far from it. He turned back to Leo then, adjusting the bandage on his son's foot with care that made something low and aching twist under my ribs. Men like him were easy to fear from a distance. Up close, the dangerous thing was how badly they could make tenderness look like restraint. When the lights came back with a hard electric buzz, Lucia flinched. So did I. That was when I heard it. A thin, high distortion under the ordinary sounds of the kitchen, too regular to be pipes, too sharp to be the refrigerator motor. It trembled at the edge of hearing, then vanished. I lifted my head. Dante noticed immediately. "What? Did you hear that?" Luca appeared in the doorway as if summoned by the question itself. "Hear what?" I listened again. Rain on glass, the hum of restored power. Leo breathing through his mouth because he was trying not to cry. Lucia rubbing her thumb against the seam of my sleeve. Dante standing close enough that I could smell clean soap and storm. Then there, a faint metallic whine, then a click. I turned toward the service corridor. "It's wrong," I said. Dante's gaze sharpened. "What is?" "The sound." Luca and Dante exchanged one fast look that changed the room. "Stay here," Dante said. "Absolutely not." His eyes came back to mine, flat and dark. That was not a discussion. I rose anyway, Lucia sliding reluctantly off my shoulder. "Then stop phrasing everything like a prison warden, and maybe people will stop ignoring you." Luca made a tired exhale that might have been prayer. Dante studied me for one beat, then handed his gun to Luca. That unsettled me more than if he had kept it. 2 minutes, he said. We followed the sound through the service corridor toward the back staircase. At first I thought I had imagined it. Then I heard the distortion again near a narrow table beneath an old porcelain clock. Not the clock itself. Behind it, I stepped closer. There. Luca moved the table aside. Dante pressed one palm flat to the wall, then looked at the small vent set low near the skirting board. "Open it," he said. Luca pried the cover free with a knife. Inside, hidden in the dark, a tiny black transmitter blinked once. No one spoke. Rain struck the windows harder. My skin went cold all over. Dante took the device from Luca's hand and stared at it with a stillness that felt more dangerous than rage. "How long?" Luca's voice had gone to stone. "I don't know." Lucia was watching us with wide eyes. Leo had gone silent in the particular way frightened boys did when they were trying to become men too early. I knelt in front of them. "Look at me." They didn't. So I lifted the silver spoon from the tray still sitting abandoned by the sink and tapped 3 soft beats against the counter's porcelain sugar bowl. Lucia blinked first. Leo second. That's it, I said quietly. Borrow my hands. Their breathing slowed by a fraction. Behind me, Dante said, Luca. It was only a name. It sounded like a verdict. Luca took the transmitter and disappeared into the hall. I stood when the twins were steady enough to walk, and Dante reached for Lucia automatically. She went to him. Leo took my hand with fierce embarrassment, as if daring anyone to comment on it. We started back toward the nursery. At the staircase landing, Dante stopped me with one touch at my elbow. Not hard. Worse, his fingers closed around the sleeve of my nightdress, warm through the thin cotton. You heard that through a storm. Yes. How? I looked at him. I told you. I hear when notes lie. His gaze dropped to my mouth for one dangerous second, then away. Nothing in this house is accidental anymore, he said. The words should have sounded like warning. Instead, they sounded like confession. He released my arm and took his daughter upstairs. I stood on the landing with Leo's small hand in mine and the silver spoon still clutched in my bandaged palm, listening to the house breathe around us. This time, the silence wasn't empty. It was listening back. By morning, the entire house felt tighter. Men moved faster. Doors opened and shut with clipped efficiency. Radios murmured. The West Wing stayed closed. Even the air in the kitchen had gone thin with tension. Only Pietro Rinaldi remained stubbornly committed to foolishness. I found him at the island trying to hollow out a dinner roll and stuff cucumber slices inside it so it could technically, in his words, count as medical compliance. Doctor. Marta Bellucci stood across from him in a slate-gray dress, one dark brow arched high enough to cut glass. That, she said, is still bread. Pietro pressed a hand to his chest. Marta, if you criminalize hope, what remains of civilization? What remains, she said coolly, is your coronary function. He looked at me as I entered with Lucia on one hip and Leo dragging a wooden train behind him. Bianca, witness this cruelty. She enjoys my suffering. Marta glanced at me, then at the children, her expression softened by a hair. He lies about his cholesterol and flirts when cornered. I flirt as a survival mechanism. You flirt because language was wasted on you. I laughed before I could stop myself. Lucia did too, small, surprised, like the sound had escaped her by accident. Every head in the kitchen turned. Lucia instantly looked offended by her own happiness. Pietro, to his credit, didn't make a performance of it. He only slid off the stool, broke the roll in half, and passed the legal portion to Leo as though conducting sacred diplomacy. Tell no one, he whispered. Leo took it with grave corruption. Marta examined my bandaged hand when the twins were occupied with milk. How deep? Not enough to earn sympathy. That wasn't the question. I held still while she unwound the gauze. Her hands were competent and cool. You should have had stitches, she said. I did mention your employer's kitchen seems committed to violence. From the doorway, Dante said, noted. The room altered around his voice. He stepped in wearing a dark suit again, all clean lines and restraint, but there was something off about the perfection of him this morning. He had not slept. I knew because men who slept did not look that sharpened. Marta tied off fresh bandaging. You, she said to him without fear, are worse for people's blood pressure than Pietro's diet. Pietro looked delighted. You see. At last, someone speaks truth in this house. Dante ignored him and looked at me. You and the children will use the greenhouse today. The greenhouse. It has one entrance and thicker glass. Nothing says relaxing afternoon like strategic horticulture. His gaze held mine. Humor me. That was new, not the command beneath it, the wording. I took the twins out just after lunch. The greenhouse stood beyond the east terrace, all wrought iron ribs and fogged glass, lush with winter herbs and citrus trees Gianna guarded like holy relics. The air inside was warm and damp, smelling of basil, earth, and orange peel. Leo prowled the path between planters, pretending not to enjoy himself. Lucia sat beside me on a bench and arranged fallen leaves by size. For a little while, the world narrowed to green things and children small enough to be distracted by lemon blossoms. Then the door opened. Dante stepped inside without an escort. No suit jacket this time, only rolled sleeves and tired eyes. Lucia looked up. "Papa, Bianca says Rosemary smells angry." I frowned. I said determined. "Same thing," Leo muttered. Dante came to stand near the bench. "She's not wrong." The twins resumed their work after a glance, secure enough now to let silence exist without filling it with panic. Dante looked at my hand. "Marta, she disapproves of my tissue choices. She disapproves of everyone's." A smile almost touched my mouth. "Even yours, especially mine." The admission surprised me into looking at him. Sunlight filtered green through the glass, cutting across his face and making him look briefly younger. More human, which was its own problem. He glanced toward the children, then lowered his voice. "The device was military grade. That sounds expensive. It also means it was installed by someone who knew our routines." I heard the word and hated how much I noticed it. "You think it's someone inside," I said. "I think trust is expensive too." Lucia wandered over with a sprig of mint. Dante took it from her and tucked it behind her ear with clumsy care. She let him. Leo pretended not to watch and watched everything. "What happened to their mother?" I asked before caution could stop me. Stillness. Not in him, in the whole room. I should have apologized. Instead I waited. Dante's eyes stayed on Lucia. "An attack reached the house." I said nothing. "I was late," he added. "There it was, not the event, the wound." Before I could answer, Pietro burst through the greenhouse door carrying a paper bag with the furtive urgency of a smuggler. "Marta is looking for me," he announced. "If she asks, I died honorably." "You're holding cannoli," I said. "Exactly, honorably." Leo stared at the bag. Lucia clapped once. For the first time that day, Dante laughed, low, brief. Startled out of him like something he had forgotten his body could do. The sound changed him. Worse, it changed me. Then through the warm hush of the greenhouse, I heard a sound so faint it could have been nothing. A sharp click, not from the plants, not from the door. From the old stone saint outside the eastern pane. My spine went cold. I turned toward it slowly. Someone had been listening even here. They found the second device inside the broken stone base of St. Cecilia before sunset. By dinner, the house had split cleanly into two moods. The children's wing, where everyone moved gently and spoke low, and the west wing, where men who had killed for Dante Salvator went in and out of closed doors, with their faces turned to iron. I should have stayed upstairs. Instead, I made the mistake of carrying a tea tray down the corridor at the exact moment Vittorio Ferrante emerged from Dante's office. He was handsome in the way polished knives were handsome, silver at the temples, perfect suit, smiled too civilized to trust. His gaze landed on me and did not hurry away. "So," he said softly. "The new girl." Every instinct in me tightened. I knew he was important before anyone introduced him. Men stepped aside for him without meaning to. Even the air near him felt overmanaged. "Bianca Conti," he said, reading my name from nowhere I could see. I stopped moving. He smiled wider. What a familiar surname. The tray went heavier in my hands. Luca appeared at the end of the corridor like a bad omen made practical. "Vittorio." Vittorio's eyes stayed on mine. "Did no one tell you? Your father and I once did business." I heard my own pulse. Then Dante stepped out of the office behind him. He took one look at my face and the room changed. "Leave us," he said. Vittorio spread his hands. "Of course." He passed me close enough that I smelled expensive cologne and winter leather. "Ask him," he murmured. "Ask what Carlo Conti was." Then he was gone. I set the tray down before my hands could betray me. Dante looked at Luca. The children. Luca nodded once and disappeared. That left the two of us alone in the corridor with lamplight, silence, and my father's name laid open between us like a blade. Well, I asked. Dante did not lie. I would give him that. Carlo Conti handled ledgers for my family. My throat tightened. And then he vanished with records that got people killed. I stared at him. A strange calm came over me then, the kind that arrived only when fear had nowhere left to go. My father died when I was 19, I said. In a car that went through a guardrail on the Hutchinson Parkway. He left debts, a watch that didn't work, and a wife who believed he had been a mediocre man with terrible timing. If you know more than that, congratulations. Dante's jaw shifted. You should have told me. You never asked. That is not the point. Then what is? My voice cracked hard and ugly on the last word. That I carry the wrong name for your comfort. His gaze held mine too steadily. The point is that someone planted surveillance in my home while a woman connected to an old betrayal sits beside my children. The words landed exactly where they were meant to. I went very still. There were many ways to humiliate a person. The cleanest was to tell the truth as if it were accusation. I would never hurt them. Something changed in his face then. Not enough. I know, he said. It would have been easier if he had not, because what remained after that was worse than suspicion. It was calculation. What happens now? I asked. His answer came too quickly. He had already decided. For tonight you stay in the East Room. I laughed once. It sounded broken. So, house arrest. For safety. For whose? His silence answered. That did me in more than anything else had. I walked past him before he could touch me and went upstairs with my spine locked straight. If he said my name, I didn't hear it. If I had heard it, I might have done something humiliating, like turn back. The East Room had become a cage by the time Luca shut the door from the outside. He stood there a second too long. I'm sorry, you should be. His hand tightened on the knob. He's trying not to make a worse mistake. Men always call it that when they wound someone on purpose. Luca flinched just once. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at my bandaged hand until I couldn't anymore. Below me, the house kept breathing. Somewhere down the corridor, a child cried out in sleep. I moved before I remembered I was locked in. The door did not open. A minute later came 3 small taps on the wall, then 3 again. I froze. Lucia's room shared this wall. 3 soft beats. A pause, then 3 more. Borrow my hands, my throat closed. I took the silver hairbrush from the vanity and tapped the plaster back in the same rhythm. Once, twice, 3. The answering quiet on the other side hurt worse than shouting. An hour later, my door opened. Dante stood there in the low lamplight, one hand on the key, his face unreadable. She won't sleep without answering you, he said. I rose slowly. So I'm promoted from suspect to lullaby. His eyes closed for the briefest second. No, he said. Then quieter, that was never what you were. But he had still locked the door, and both of us knew some truths arrived too late to prevent damage. He did not apologize. Men like Dante rarely did. Not because they felt nothing, because remorse in their world was treated like blood in water. What he did instead was walk me to the nursery himself. Lucia was sitting up in bed with her hair in frightened tangles. Leo was awake too, pretending he was. When they saw me, both of them changed in small, painful ways. Lucia reached first. Leo looked at the wall. I sat between their beds with the silver spoon and the porcelain saucer. 3 soft taps. Their breathing steadied. Dante remained in the doorway longer than necessary, watching as if memorizing the mechanics of peace. Only after the twins drifted off did he speak. You're angry. I kept my eyes on the spoon. Your observational gifts are terrifying. He came farther into the room. Vittorio knew your surname too quickly. So did you. That is not the same. It feels remarkably similar from where I'm sitting. He absorbed that without flinching. Then he said, I had Carlo's death looked into years ago. I looked up sharply. He was not the traitor I believed him to be, Dante said. But by the time I knew that, he was already dead. My pulse stumbled. What? Dante's voice stayed level, almost cold, which was how I knew the truth beneath it had teeth. Records disappeared after he tried to move them to federal custody. The root was leaked. He died before he could speak. The room seemed to tilt under me. My mother was told it was an accident. Your mother was told what kept her alive. I stared at him. And you just kept this. No, the word came harder. I kept not knowing how much of it was safe to trust. I should have hated him then. Part of me did. The rest heard the shape of his guilt and recognized something ruined and human inside it. I looked down at the saucer in my lap. Then I heard it, faint, wrong, immediate. A high, insect-thin tremor from the shelf near the painted stars. I stood so fast the spoon rang against porcelain. Dante's hand went to the small of my back before he could stop himself. What? There. I crossed to the shelf of carved animals and tilted my head. The hum sharpened near a wooden music box shaped like a swan. Lucia stirred in her bed. I froze, then lifted the box carefully and handed it to Dante. It's too new, I whispered. His eyes narrowed. This was a christening gift. From who? He didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. Vittorio. Dante opened the box with a knife from his pocket. Inside, tucked beneath the mechanism, sat another device and a folded slip of paper yellowed by time. Not recent. Old. He unfolded it. I watched his face change. Dante, I said. He handed me the paper. The handwriting was cramped, hurried, familiar in the worst possible way, because I had seen versions of it on grocery lists and overdue bills all my life. If this reaches you, Ferrante is inside the house. Sofia knows enough to die for it. I am trying to move the books. Don't trust the West Wing. Carlo, my knees nearly gave out. For a second I couldn't breathe. My father's hand, my father's warning, hidden inside a child's gift from the man he named. Dante caught my elbow before I hit the floor. His grip was firm, careful. I looked up at him with my father's note shaking between us. You locked me in a room, I said, because grief made honesty rude. His face closed for one beat, then opened just enough for damage to show through. Yes. From the corridor came pounding footsteps. Luca appeared already armed. Southgate breach. Everything happened at once after that. Dante moved first, sweeping the twins from their beds with frightening efficiency. Leo woke fighting, Lucia crying. I took her when she reached for me, her heart beat wild against my throat. Safe room, Luca said. No, I heard myself answer. All three men looked at me. The West Wing, I said, clutching Carlo's note. He wrote, don't trust the West Wing. A distant burst of gunfire cracked through the house. Dante's eyes locked on mine. Then he made his choice. East cellar, he said. Move. He put the children in my arms and handed me his faith with them. That was more terrifying than the bullets. The safe house was in Queens, above a shuttered upholstery warehouse that smelled like dust, thread, and old rain. Pietro called it deeply insulting real estate for people of our taste. Marta called it secure. Gianna called it drafty. The twins called it boring until Pietro turned sofa cushions into a fortress and declared himself their criminal architect. By then, Luca had a stitched graze along his shoulder. Pietro had been forbidden pastries for stress eating, and Dante had not left my line of sight for more than 10 minutes at a time without making sure someone else did. I noticed. I pretended not to. The first night, the coffee tasted like punishment and the radiator screamed every 20 minutes like a dying opera singer. Lucia wouldn't sleep in the strange room. Leo insisted he was fine, which meant he absolutely was not. So I sat on the floor between their cots with the silver spoon Gianna had packed like a relic and tapped 3 soft beats against a chipped mug. Lucia's eyes drooped. Leo lay rigid for another minute, then finally turned toward the wall and let sleep take him without admitting it had won. When I rose, Dante was in the doorway. No one in this family ever entered a room like an ordinary person. He leaned one shoulder to the frame, loosened tie hanging crooked, face tired enough to tell the truth. "You kept the spoon," he said. "It works." His gaze dropped to it, then back to my face. "So do you." The words landed low, too low. I put the spoon down before my fingers could betray me. In the kitchen, Pietro was attempting to impress Marta by chopping vegetables one-handed. "You hold the knife like a hostage negotiator," she said. "I hold the knife like a man with emotional depth. You hold it like a lawsuit." Leo, perched on a stool nearby, looked at Pietro with solemn contempt. "Bianca cuts faster." Marta's mouth twitched. Pietro placed a hand over his heart. "Et tu, tiny prince." Even Lucia smiled into her milk. For a moment, one reckless, impossible moment, it felt like family. That was the dangerous thing about safety. It made you forget how temporary it was. Later that night, when the twins were finally asleep, Luca spread the recovered ledgers and Carlo's note across the scarred kitchen table. Dante stood opposite him, jacket off, forearms braced on wood. I should have left them to it. Instead, I stayed. No one asked me to go. "The numbers match shell transfers Vittorio controlled," Luca said. "Payments routed through funeral homes, shipping fronts, church restorations." "Classy," I murmured. Dante looked at the ledgers. "If Carlo tried to move these, Vittorio would have known." I stared at my father's handwriting in the margins. Tiny corrections, dates. A man trying to build truth out of numbers while the walls closed in. "He wasn't dirty," I said quietly. "No," Dante said. The certainty in his voice hurt more than doubt had. "He died trying to stop this." Dante lifted his head. "Yes." I met his eyes across the table. "Then say it like it matters." Something in him went still. "He died because I trusted the wrong man," Dante said. There was no room in the sentence for comfort, only truth. I looked away first. Maybe because if I hadn't, I would have forgiven him too quickly. Maybe because I already had. Marta came in then with fresh bandages for Luca and found Pietro pretending not to hover nearby. "You are looming," she told him. "I am providing morale. You are blocking the drawer." He stepped aside with theatrical suffering. "If you ever love me, I will die from the shock." Without looking up from Luca's shoulder, she said, "Then at least die having taken your medication." Pietro grinned so hard it was almost indecent. I laughed. Dante looked at me. Not the way men looked when they wanted entertainment. The way starving men looked at open doors. Much later, after everyone else slept, I found him alone by the narrow window at the end of the hall. The city beyond was all sodium light and distant sirens. "You should sleep," I said. "You first. That isn't how authority works." "No," he said quietly, "it is." I moved to stand beside him. For a while, we listened to the radiator bang and the city breathe. Then he said, "I was wrong about you." I folded my arms. "That's almost an apology. Should I sit down?" His mouth shifted. "I don't know how to do this gently," he said. The honesty of it brushed something raw in me. "Then don't do it gently," I said. "Do it true." He turned toward me. The hall was narrow, the night narrower. "I should have protected your father when he brought me proof," Dante said. "I was too busy hunting the men outside my walls to see the one already inside them." The words left nowhere to hide. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said the truest thing I had. "Don't make me pay for being the daughter of a dead man who tried." His hand lifted, stopped just short of my face, and closed into a fist instead. "I won't," he said. This time I believed him. We went back because Vittorio expected us to stay gone. That, according to Dante, was reason enough to return armed. The Salvetter house waited under a hard gray sky, all marble and old money and windows bright with the lie of normal life. Security had doubled. The twins were kept in the East Wing with Gianna, Marta, and enough armed men to invade a small nation. I wore black because Gianna handed it to me, and because grief, in that house, always dressed well. The plan was simple in the way dangerous plans pretended to be simple. Let Vittorio believe the ledgers were in Dante's study. Let him come for them. Catch him inside the house he had once turned into a grave. By evening, every nerve in me felt sanded raw. I was carrying a tray past the music room when I heard it. Not a voice. A change. The grandfather clock in the corridor ticked one fraction too fast, then paused, a breath hidden in the walls. Wait where there should have been none, I stopped. Luca, posted near the stairs, saw my face and straightened. What? I set the tray down. There's someone in the passage behind the music room. He went still. There is no passage. I looked at the portrait of some dead Salvator matriarch hanging crooked by half an inch. There is now. Luca signaled without visible motion. Two men peeled off from the shadows, and then the portrait swung open. Gunfire exploded down the corridor. I hit the floor hard, the tray shattering beside me. Luca fired back. One of Dante's men went down. Somewhere upstairs Lucia screamed. My whole body turned to ice. The hidden passage spat out two gunmen in dark jackets and one silver-haired ghost in a perfect coat. Vittorio Ferrante. He moved through violence like a man irritated by weather. Dante, he called over the shots. You should have stayed suspicious. It always suited you. Dante appeared from the far hall with murder on his face. Everything after that blurred into noise, marble dust, and the terrible intimacy of survival. Luca took one man down, Dante another. Vittorio retreated toward the grand staircase, firing once over the banister just to keep everyone low. Then Leo ran out of the east corridor. My heart stopped. He had Lucia's hand in his. Brave, stupid, beautiful little fool. Get down, I screamed. A gunman still hidden in the passage turned toward the children. I heard him before I saw him, the scrape of leather, the catch in breath, the tiny mechanical complaint of a safety releasing. I moved without thinking. So did Dante. I got to the twins first, throwing all three of us behind the overturned console table. The shot cracked above us. Wood burst over my hair. Dante vaulted the banister. I would remember that as long as I lived. A dark shape moving through flying plaster and gun smoke, beautiful and brutal and far too late once already. Not this time. He hit the gunman hard enough to drive both of them into the wall. Luca dragged the twins toward the east wing while I stumbled after them, half deaf from the shots. Vittorio vanished into the old passage. When the house finally stopped screaming, Dante came down the corridor breathing hard, blood on his cuff that was not his. Where is he? I asked. Gone, the answer felt like fresh violence. Lucia clung to my waist. Leo's face had gone white with the effort of not shaking. Dante crouched before them. Look at me. They did. His voice stayed steady by force. You do not run toward gunfire again. Leo swallowed. Bianca was there. The room went silent. Dante's eyes lifted to mine, too much in them, too raw. Too late for distance. Then Luca came from the music room with a strip of black fabric in his hand and fury in his face. He left this. It was tied around a packet shoved into the wall paneling. Inside lay a single conservatory recital program, with my name on it from 6 years ago. And on the back, in Vittorio's hand, bring the ledgers to St. Agnes Conservatory by midnight, or the children finish what their mother started. The blood drained from my body. He had not come for the books. He had come for me. The conservatory had been closed for 4 years. Rain had swollen the old front doors and peeled the gilt letters from the sign. Inside, the hall still smelled faintly of rosin, dust, and old ambition. Every sound echoed too long. Every memory walked a beat behind me. Vittorio chose it because he knew what it had been to me. Men like him always preferred a cruelty with design. Dante did not want me there. That was unfortunate for both of us. I know the building, I said in the idling car outside. The practice rooms, the service stair, the stage doors. He looked at me from the dark interior, jaw locked so hard I thought it might crack. And if he wants you dead, then keeping me outside won't improve my odds. Bianca, no. I leaned closer before fear could loosen my spine. He used my name, my father, my past, your children. Stop trying to protect me by removing me from my own life. Rain tracked down the windshield between us. Luca sat in the front seat saying nothing because wise men recognized private war. Dante looked at me for one long, impossible second. Then he handed me a small gun. My breath caught. I hate this, he said. I know, you stay behind me. That depends entirely on whether you deserve cooperation. His mouth almost moved. Then we went in. The lobby was dark except for one bare work light glowing over the old reception desk. A piano key sounded somewhere deeper in the building. Single note. Wrong sustain. Vittorio wanted us listening. We moved through the corridor in a staggered line. Luca left, Dante center, me close enough to feel the heat of him through my coat. Water dripped from the ceiling. Doors stood half open on empty practice rooms. At the end of the hall was the recital chamber. Its stage lights were on. Vittorio stood beside the grand piano with the ledgers on the bench and a gun resting loose in one hand. He looked almost elegant under the spill of light. I wondered which of you would arrive angrier, he said. Dante's voice went to ice. You touched my children, Vittorio smiled faintly. You say that like they were ever safe with men like us. I barely heard him, because under his voice, under the stage light buzz, under rain against old glass, I heard breathing, not Vittorio's. Elsewhere backstage left, there was another man, hidden. Dante, I said softly. Vittorio kept talking. Sophia understood too late, Carlo earlier. You always had a talent for delayed comprehension. My father's name struck like a slap. What did you do to him? I asked. Vittorio turned his head toward me. Your father wanted morality from arithmetic, tiresome quality in an accountant. Rage sharpened everything. He tried to warn you, I said to Dante without looking away from Vittorio. My father tried and died for it. I know, Dante said. Vittorio's smile thinned. And now the daughter proves as inconvenient as the man. Backstage left. A shoe squeaked almost silently. I stepped sideways. Dante noticed because Dante noticed everything about danger. What is it? There's someone else, I said. Vittorio fired. So did the hidden man. The second shot came from the dark wing exactly where I had heard the false breath. Dante moved first, dragging me down as the bullet shattered the edge of the piano. Luca returned fire toward the curtain. The hidden shooter cried out. Vittorio swore and bolted for the stage-right exit. Chaos tore open. I crawled for the fallen bench, fingers closing around the metal page-turner lying near the music stand. Not a weapon, a rod, thin and hard. Dante pursued Vittorio into the wing. Luca shouted something I didn't catch. Then, from the dark behind the curtain, the wounded second gunman rose again and aimed at Dante's back. No time, no line of fire. So I did the only thing I knew would cut through panic and distance and motion. I struck the metal rod against the cast-iron leg of the piano. 3 hard taps, sharp enough to slice the room open. Dante turned at the sound. The hidden man fired. Dante fired first. Silence crashed down after. For 1 second nothing moved except dust in the stage light. Then Vittorio laughed weakly from the wing. Still late, he said. Dante went toward him. I followed because leaving felt impossible. We found Vittorio half collapsed against a stack of scenery flats, blood darkening his perfect coat. He looked less like a kingmaker now, more like what he had always been, a coward with patience. Dante stood over him with the gun low at his side. You let her die, Dante said. Vittorio coughed, smiling red. I let you become what you needed to be. No, Dante said. The word was quiet, terrible. You only showed me what would happen if I stayed blind. Vittorio's eyes shifted to me. Your father begged. I stepped closer despite the blood. And still had more honor dying than you did living. That finally seemed to matter. His face changed, just enough. Dante looked down at the man who had hollowed his life from the inside and said, Carlo Conti died trying to save my family. Then he ended it. Afterward, in the stunned, ringing quiet, I felt my knees give. Dante turned before I hit the floor. He caught me with both arms, not careful, desperate. I was shaking too hard to hide it. He was breathing too hard to pretend. Against the ruin of the conservatory, with rain crawling down broken windows and blood drying in ugly patterns on the stage floor, Dante pressed his forehead to mine. You heard him, he said roughly. The second man. I heard the lie in the room. His eyes closed. When he opened them again, there was nothing guarded left in them. Songbird, he said, and this time the word broke like prayer. Then he kissed me, like a man who had survived something and knew survival was not the same as safety. Like grief had teeth and tenderness anyway. Like 3 soft taps could become a heartbeat if you let them. In the end, the house did not become softer. It became honest. There was a difference. Vittorio's men disappeared or changed loyalties with practical speed. The hidden passages were sealed. The West Wing was stripped room by room until even the walls looked relieved. Carlo Conti's name was spoken aloud at Dante's table with respect sharp enough to feel like justice. Gianna cried exactly once while making sauce and denied it with lethal conviction. Pietro brought cannoli to celebrate surviving extreme emotional hardship. Marta confiscated 2, allowed him 1, and kissed his cheek when she thought no one noticed. Everyone noticed. Leo announced he had known it would happen. Lucia asked if this meant Pietro would stop being dramatic. Never, Pietro said gravely. Love has only worsened me. The twins slept more, not perfectly. Not every night. But sometimes I would pass their room and hear only the small, even breaths of children who were beginning to trust darkness again. That felt bigger than victory. As for Dante, he stopped ordering me to stay. That was how I knew it mattered. 1 week after St. Agnes, I found him alone in the music room just before dusk. The piano stood open. Rain whispered at the windows. Sophia's photograph had been moved from the side table to the mantel, not hidden, not displayed like a wound anymore. Simply present. He turned when I entered. No suit jacket, no audience, no armor he didn't absolutely need. I had your conservatory records recovered, he said. I blinked. Recovered from what? Storage, debt proceedings. Men who confused paper with ownership. My throat tightened. Dante, there's more. He crossed the room and handed me a folder. Inside were transfer papers, cleared liens, letters from an estate attorney, and 1 final page with my mother's clinic account stamped paid. I stared at it, then at him. You can't solve me with money. I know, his voice dropped lower. That is why I'm not asking you to stay because you need something. The room went very still. He took 1 more step, only 1. It was enough. I'm asking because I do, he said. There were 1,000 dangerous things in the world. A man like Dante Salvator telling the truth without force among them. I looked down at the papers in my hand, at the evidence of care rendered in practical forms, because tenderness still frightened him enough to disguise itself as logistics. Then I set the folder aside. What if I stay and keep arguing with you? I asked. I assume that's guaranteed. What if the children love me more? His mouth shifted. Already a lost cause. I should have laughed. Instead, I went close enough to feel his breath. What if one day you try to lock me out of my own life again? His eyes held mine, dark and direct and stripped clean of evasion. Then you leave me for it. Honesty. Again, that was the thing about him in the end. He did not become harmless, he became known. I touched the front of his shirt where his heart lived under linen and scar tissue and history. All right, I said. The exhale that left him then sounded almost like pain. He kissed me slowly this time. No blood in the air. No gunfire. No shattered stage lights, just the rain, the piano, and the astonishing quiet of being wanted without being used. Later in the nursery, Leo pretended to read while Lucia arranged toy animals in strict diplomatic rows. I sat on the carpet between them with a teacup Gianna had sacrificed to our rituals and tapped the spoon against it 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. Lucia smiled. Leo rolled his eyes and moved his lion closer to the rabbit anyway. From the doorway came an answering sound. 3 soft taps of silver against porcelain. I looked up. Dante stood there holding one of Gianna's demi-tasse cups in his large, improbable hand, his expression unreadable if you did not know him. I knew him now. The word he had once used like possession had become something else entirely. Songbird, he said, not cold, not careful, home. And when he crossed the room toward us, the house did not sound haunted anymore, only lived in.